Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. We are back here on the rooftop on Lexington Avenue. It's my great pleasure to have Ray Tierney here. Ray, how are you?
Nice to see you. How are you?
Absolutely brilliant. Listen,
welcome to New York City.
It's great to be, in this weather it's great to be here anyway, isn't it? It's always great to be here. Great buzz around the city at the moment. We're right in the World Cup. Knicks won in 5. Everything's happening. It feels like a good place to be right now, right?
It certainly does. Love the Knicks. They've got 3 guys from Villanova, which is my alma mater.
There you go.
So while I'm not a huge professional basketball fan, the fact that they've got 3 integral or key folks on their team, Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, and Mikal Bridges kind of leading the charge and bringing them the championship for the first time in the 53 years. Couldn't be prouder.
Brings all the finest out,
on top
right?
of the fact Villanova has the first pope of any university in the United States. So a lot of good things happening.
Brings out all the best. And Ray Tierney as well.
And Ray Tierney. And by the way, I'm not going to jump off of the bridge here. We're going to sit and hopefully have a good, engaging conversation, and I look forward to it.
Absolutely. Look, I've been wanting you to have you on the show for a long time, and it's really good that we can get you here. Ray, give us a bit of the bio. Tell us a little bit about yourself and
You're probably not something that I'm really that good at. I'd rather talk about other people than myself. But I've been in financial services / capital markets for the better part of 43 years. I put a bow on that in July of 2024 and have been working as an advisor, investor in various different initiatives in AI and technology. Areas that are of interest to me are space exploration, humanoid robots, and quantum computing. And I'm an investor in those 3 verticals. But prior to that, as I said, I spent 43 years in capital markets, loved every minute of it. I was perfectly suited for this business. I spent a number of years starting out at Payne Weber. From there, I moved on to what was First Boston before they got infiltrated by the Swiss and became Credit Suisse. From there, moved to UBS, and in 1994, which is probably a key point in my career path, I moved to Morgan Stanley, where I spent just about 18 years, both on the sell side, running various different distribution groups, and then I moved to the buy side, where I spent 5 years running the execution business globally, and that was right before the financial crisis.
Yeah.
So the financial crisis came along in 2002, 2008, 2009, and Morgan Stanley, like Goldman, like JP Morgan, was under the gun for various different reasons. And Morgan Stanley decided if they were going to stick around, they needed to sell some assets. And some of those assets were in the retail mutual fund business. So the world which I kind of looked after went from, a very large kind of playground to a very small playground. So the opportunities to continue to push forth with inside Morgan Stanley on the buy side shrank overnight because of the financial crisis. Just was fortunate enough at that same time to be recruited to Bloomberg to run Tradebook, which is their electronic execution platform, their broker-dealer, a separate LLC inside of Bloomberg LP, by a gentleman by the name of Dan Doctoroff. Wonderful guy, was the CEO and the president of broader Bloomberg.
Just down the road here.
Yep, right on 58th Street in Lex. And for 8 years, I was at Bloomberg running Tradebook, and then I also looked after their order management system business, which we called Trading Solutions. And that was a portfolio of 3 different businesses, COMS, TOMS, and AIM, all serving, buy-side, sell-side, fixed income, equity, derivatives, and in some cases, insurance companies. In 2017, 2018, give me a little bit of room on, I decided I wanted to pivot into getting involved, more deeply involved in FinTech. So I became an advisor for the likes of Genesis Global, Street Context, and a bunch of others. I also was an investor, an advisor, board member of some of those FinTech companies. And some of them have gone on to do great things like Genesis Global and under the direction of Stephen Murphy and now James Harrison, and then Street Context under Blair Livingston. And I always thought, innovation and positive disruption was the future state of where our world needed to go. And we've clearly seen the benefits of that over the last 10 years. And there's much more collaboration between those innovators, those startups, and the incumbents today than there's ever been. And I'm a huge fan of that. And from there, I stayed involved, as I said, as an advisor, investor, board member, what have you. And in 2021, out of the blue, Broadridge calls me in, I think it was March of 2021, and asked me if I'd be interested in becoming an advisor, a senior advisor reporting to Tim Goki, who's the CEO of Broadridge, on an acquisition they just made, which was Itiviti. And I knew things about Itiviti from some of the people that worked with me at Bloomberg, as well as the product and the clients that they served. And I had worked with Broadridge when I was at Bloomberg in a middle office project. And so I wasn't doing anything, what harm could it do? So lo and behold, I walk in, I'm part of this, group, figuring out how to integrate Itiviti into the four walls of Broadridge and help, think of it as a marriage counselor, bringing the people from Itiviti into the Broadridge family and making them feel welcomed and comfortable and what have you. So I basically was involved in the integration, the stability, getting the roadmaps in order, trying to, create a strategic vision and plan and start to execute around that and, start to bring attrition down, which we were very successful in doing. Lo and behold, I went from, this strategic advisor for a month or two to where I stepped in when the folks from Itiviti decided to leave and go back to Nordic Capital and get involved in some of their other portfolio companies. So I stepped in June of 2021 and stayed to July of 24 as the CEO and president of Itiviti, now called Broadridge Trading and Connectivity Solutions.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience. The people at Broadridge are wonderful. The culture is well defined. They execute around it. They accept it and embrace the folks of Itiviti around the world with open arms. And I think relative to the integration, stabilizing the platform inside Broadridge, getting the roadmaps in place, having the people feel like they were part of the solution, I think we executed upon that. Towards the end of my tenure, as I said, in July 24, I made it a priority of mine to bring in my replacement. Which I did through a gentleman by the name of Frank Troyce, who is a extremely capable, competent, professional in this industry that will take Broadridge and Broadridge Trading and Connectivity to new heights in the next coming years. And I look forward to cheering him on and them on from the sidelines.
It's good to be from the sidelines sometimes.
And so the last couple of years I've been on the sidelines. On my LinkedIn page, it says grandfather to CJ, Grayson, Tierney, and Ollie. And that is literally what I do every day. I'm a big fan of family, and my biggest priority is my family. I say often, and people know me for saying family first. I spend more time with these kids than I spend with anybody, and nothing could be greater than that.
And you get so much from all
I love
that
it.
sort of thing.
I love it. Especially with the two older ones, it's like a comedy show. I take them out to play golf, and my job is really to keep them from wrestling on the first green or first fairway. So it's all good. What keeps me busy today other than grandchildren? I'm involved with a couple private equity firms around looking at some companies for them to bring into their portfolio. I've also been advising some startups on a couple of different initiatives, particularly here in the United States. And I'm looking at a couple of opportunities, whether it's going to be as an advisor or a board member or even an operator in a smaller organization. So there's probably more news to come on that in the weeks and months ahead. It will not be in traditional finance. It'll be more like, I'm a big fan of innovation and disruption. And AI. And I'm a big believer in you got to embrace it to empower yourself. So I'm looking at, for lack of a better word, DeFi. So more decentralized finance, probably more in the tokenized kind of area with technology or infrastructure.
I think that DeFi world and its merger with the traditional finance creates a whole load of opportunities, and there's loads to come into on that. I also want to talk about something you just mentioned there, which I know is very important to you. You mentioned the family piece, but you also mentioned culture. With a 40-plus year career in the industry, you've done that by recognising the good, the bad, and the ugly of the cultures of what we've seen in this city and the industry. And I think the financial services world has got reputations in various different parts of it. But I think there's certain companies that have absolutely thrived from it, and the businesses that you've been in there and some of the ones that you've mentioned, I think are absolutely built and thrive because of their culture. Tell me a little bit, I mean, this is a huge question to throw at you, but give me your philosophy around culture.
So I've always believed culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Wise Drucker once said.
Yes, and so I don't think you can have a strategy until you've put a well-defined culture from the top down.
Yeah.
Culture doesn't get created from the bottom up.
Yeah.
It helps that people embrace the culture and help drive it all throughout the organization, but culture starts at the top.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of people being your biggest and greatest resource. So despite what I believe around AI, I don't look at it as a disintermediator of folks.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, I'm a big believer in embrace to empower.
Yeah.
Right. And I think folks, despite some of the challenges that they hear, and despite some of the challenges that they may see or that they get from the firms that they work for, I do believe you need to embrace the technology in order to empower yourself going forward. But as regards to culture, I think at the end of the day, culture, as I said, starts at the top. It has to be a sense of ownership. You have to take responsibility. You have to become an owner of your firm, whether you are the CEO or whether you're the guy that just started this week. Whatever your role, whatever your responsibility is, hopefully it's clearly articulated and defined. You have to own the results of that, right? And if you don't, the only place you become an agent. And if you're an agent, you don't own the results, you don't take responsibility. So I was always looking to instill in people to take an ownership mentality, that they are part of the solution, and in order to meet the execution and the vision and the strategy laid out, you got to have a strong culture. And within that culture has to be an ownership philosophy and a mentality. And I think without those dynamics, your strategy and your execution around that will suffer. Long term. You may be able to get it short term, but I mean longer term. Without that cultural dynamic and those pillars of a cultural foundation in place, the likelihood that you can sustain your strategy throughout all the, God forbid, changes that seemingly come every day now is hard to imagine for me.
Talk to me about that sort of ownership piece, because again, I hear people talk about it in lots of different ways, and I absolutely agree with you. But again, there'll be people there who are saying that the ownership piece for me doesn't. I'm an employee. I'm not an owner of the business, etc., etc. I know this. I can think of someone in particular, Paul Humphrey at BMLL, who's done very, very well. You mentioned Nordic earlier on. Paul did very well by insisting that everyone in that business did have some ownership when he came in there. It's what he was very physical ownership. But I think you're talking much more about owning your job, owning your
I think it's both. So first off, Paul, congratulations on the acquisition into BML. Into Nordic Capital. I think that's fantastic, and I look forward to hearing about you scaling and growing your business. But ownership takes two paths for me. So it's clearly incumbent upon the company you work for to create ownership opportunities for you, i.e. equity or whatever that alternative may be. And we worked hard at Broadridge to bring equity and opportunities to have, for lack of a better word, skin in the company game to places where that was never considered before. Think of Romania, think of Mumbai or Bangalore, places like that. The other part, which I was talking about earlier, is each individual has to own their job. They have to be responsible. If you think that there are 10 people above you looking out after you each and every single day, unfortunately, you'd be sadly mistaken. So as much as you want good sponsors and good mentors, and I strongly encourage you to find those people as well, at the end of the day, your career path is up to you. It is up to you to kind of own the steps and the chapters within that kind of story. And I think that career can change every 2 to 3 years. And I'm not looking for somebody to come and tell me who they want to be in 10 years. But there's a process and an investment that needs to take place from those people as they move forward in their career path. So as much as it's incumbent upon senior management and the organizations to offer folks opportunities to kind of have some skin in the game with equity, it's also incumbent upon those folks to give those folks opportunities, assuming they work for it and they invested in it to get there. To me, I'm a big fan of meritocracy, not mediocrity. And everybody should get the opportunity as long as they invest in them, and obviously from the other side as well.
I love the meritocracy, not mediocrity piece. It's absolutely.
There's too much mediocrity in this business, and people getting opportunities that, quite frankly, for various different reasons, which we're not going to get into today, are undeserved.
We do a magazine called The Financial Technologist alongside FinTech Focus TV. In every single year, we do something called the Top 1% Workplace Awards. So I get the opportunity to speak to 100-odd leaders of FinTech firms and talk about why they see themselves as the best for technologists, or the best workplace for here, or the best culture, etc., etc. If you're sat there and you're saying, right, 2 or 3 ingredients that you would say that combine to create a great workplace, to create a top 1% environment for people to thrive in, what would you give as your words of wisdom in that space?
I think leaders, people, not operators or managers. So I first and foremost, I think there's a difference between a manager and a leader. Okay, leaders lead people, and they hopefully put those folks in a position for success. Managers, in my mind, and not a slight against managers, but their job is economics. It's financial, right? They're checking boxes, and and so the likelihood that they're going to invest in the future state of the individuals that they're responsible for isn't all that high. Versus leaders of people, leaders of of folks within the organization should have a selfless mentality towards those folks because they've already achieved, right? If you still have a selfish mentality like a manager, you care about your financials because that's how you get paid. If you have a selfless kind of philosophy and an attitude, you will then position and prepare others for equal success that you yourself have achieved. So to me, it's a selfless attitude. It is being genuine with the people you work for. So if my personality is passionate and energy and roll up your sleeves, why hide it?
I'm getting a bit of that.
Why hide it? So, and I think that's, that black and white, direct, kind of straightforward kind of approach has served me well for years. So it would be, for me, it's selfless, it's being genuine, and it's being transparent. And I absolutely believe in transparency as much as the other two because it drives trust. And that doesn't mean you need to share the secret sauce of whatever the firm is for the guy that most recently came in the door. But at the end of the day, when it comes to where your plan is, what the financials around executing that plan are, and how you're achieving to them, I see people that hide that all the time as a detriment to progress. So
communicate.
To me, it's collaboration, communication, and coordination. If you can master those 3 dynamics, you stand a pretty good chance in being successful.
Absolutely. We're talking as well. Another thing that you mentioned before is about where you're moving to, and you talked about DeFi, etc. world, and one of the things that we sort of connected about recently a couple of months ago is a post which I talked about mass redundancies from AI. A lot of fear mongering out there and all this sort of stuff, and you bit on one of those comments.
I bit on it,
which is exactly what I want. It's there for, because I think we think in a very similar sort of way about it. I am far less terrified about this new world of AI. I think there's a lot of sensationalist headlines that suit selling papers as opposed to actually giving us some views of where it is. And I think there's a load of excitement about actually what's coming at the moment. And it doesn't necessarily mean the robots are taking all of our jobs, and it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have mass youth unemployment. I think my view is there's an elevator for it, but I'm really keen to hear what it looks like from you and where your thinking goes in this sort of space.
Well, the first thing you mentioned is humanoid robots. I'm an investor in humanoid robots, and I don't think it's because they're taking my job. So the TAM of labor is roughly 50% or thereabouts of global GDP, which is roughly 50 trillion, 55 trillion. So herein lies the opportunity. But on top of it, because you brought up humanoid robots or robots in general, is that the labor force around most of the big countries in the world, the continents of the world, they're short of labor, right? They have aging demographics, and so it complementing the labor force, the human labor force with technology, whether it's humanoid robots or automation or data or analytics, I see as nothing but a positive thing. And so in order to kind of evolve and thrive, I make the statement earlier about, embrace to empower. It's no different than, when we were, as we were coming up in this industry, particularly in the equity world, where off the back of regulation, technology became front and center. It confuses the hell out of me why it's taken so long in the other asset classes to get to where, the equities is. But be that as it may, regulatorily driven, it was, adapt or die. And I took the approach that I'm not a technologist. I'm a Luddite just like everybody else. But I decided to embrace it and adapt it and use it to my benefit, and made it a tool as I approach clients, so that it would allow them to kind of have other optionality relative to outcomes that were very predictable in the past. But I do believe, the world we live in today, a a lot of narratives are spun, and this is not a political statement.
Yeah.
It goes on both sides, and it goes on around the world, whoever's speaking. I think a lot of the narratives that are spun are done without fact or data.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to point to it in this conversation, but I think when you look at AI and you look at data centers as an example, there's the narrative around polluting the water or stealing the water or raising electricity prices or that jobs will only be available for 2 or 3 years. It just doesn't even make sense. And at the end of the day, I don't know whether people are paying attention to where GDP is coming from, but it's coming from standing up data centers, not just in the United States, but around the world, and all the things that, get provided into a data center. So I think I would encourage people, rather than listening to a TikTok or watching some politician on Twitter or X, kind of opine because he's got a certain agenda, and they all have an agenda,
of course,
right? Do your own homework. Dig in and find out the truth, and then make your decision accordingly. So, but for the young folks that are, listening to this, and I know you have a fairly vast audience, embrace technology. The opportunity ahead is going to be absolutely incredible. I wish I was, not that I've ever wanted to be younger, because I truly like where I am, but I think the opportunity in the next 20 to 25 years with robot technology, but space exploration and quantum computing to solve and address problems that have plagued mankind for hundreds of centuries is really at hand because of the nature of the technology. The narrative that's out there to kind of, be afraid of it. No, address it, embrace it, and find out if it can empower you. I'm not saying everybody's going to be a technologist or everybody's going to be a scientist or everybody's going to use AI in their jobs, but you should at least be educated enough to know how it can impact you one way or another. Even if your job doesn't need AI, and I use that with air quotes, at the end of the day, there's other things in your life. Just think of scheduling and managing your schedule or your silly
Make
emails.
Your life easier.
that technology can help you with. I just think the opportunities are so vast that, it's exciting to me.
I love what you said there as well, because it's, you talked about not wishing to be younger and all that sort of stuff, which I absolutely agree with. But I think it's, you look back at it. I was speaking to another mutual friend of ours, James Harrison, yesterday.
Yes.
And
the Legend of London.
One of your top 10 favourite people.
Yes, and he's going to hear about that.
Exactly. So we were discussing. We both got sons of the same age. They're both at university together, and we were both talking about this thing and what are they going to do? How do their careers go, etc., etc. And I actually think coming back to that thing of everyone's been so negative about the opportunity for young people at the moment. And conversely, I see this awesome opportunity right now for people to be 2-3 years into their career in their first couple of weeks, because how augmented they are through the technology which they can do. It's a fast forward button which they have, but also this entrepreneurial opportunity to sort of gather some experience. But I don't think it's ever easier to be more entrepreneurial than we've seen over the last couple of years.
Costs you next to nothing to be an entrepreneur now.
Just such a great opportunity. So you don't have to do 15, 20 years worth of career to suddenly be able to be qualified or validated enough to start
100%
something.
agree.
And that to me is an enormous opportunity that people miss out. So I don't think there's going to be mass displacement. I think it's movement of jobs into different areas. I do think it's going to be an accelerator for people to be able to get somewhere quicker. I do think it's going to create an awful lot of opportunity for people.
Yeah,
I don't think there's enough narrative around that, because fear sells paper, fear goes viral. Positivity is something there which takes a little bit more work, right?
I don't have to say anything, because that's exactly what I would have said. I think at the end of the day, you nailed it. So for those fearful of being displaced, whether it's folks that are currently employed or folks that are in university or colleges around the world, embrace it to empower yourself. Not to necessarily take a job as a technologist or a product person with AI, but you should at least know the capabilities and the opportunities that it will provide you, even in whatever your field of choice is. To be narrow and put your head in the sand and kind of just, look at the old curriculum as the way out, I just think is the wrong approach, quite frankly. And in job, the market today, if all you're going in to do is being a banker without giving the opportunity to kind of explore and experiment with the technology and how it makes you more efficient and more productive in those roles and responsibilities you play, I think you're missing out on the opportunity. I loved what you talked about with an entrepreneur. So for those people that are worried there'll be a lot of job displacement, because either the curriculum wasn't suited for you to be ready for this marketplace, or whatever that reason. You now, with little to no money and little to no effort, really, like 30 minutes on a weekend, Saturday or Sunday, you yourself can solve meaningful problems that you can commercialize quite quickly with any of these models, these large language models, that if you go beyond the base model into these paper models, which cost next to nothing, and you have token kind of limits on top of it, you can solve real problems and you can be entrepreneurial. You can own your destiny. How exciting is that? And there are plenty of examples today in the United States, I can't speak for Europe or the UK, where there's 1 or 2 person organizations that have popped up that are generating hundreds, if not billions of dollars in revenue.
I know.
I mean, are you kidding me? That's
fleets of agents behind them as well.
And they have all these agents, which is the next great thing coming with technology, to do all the things that, folks might have done but didn't really like to do. So I'm excited about the future.
So tell me a little bit about this as well. So I do speak to a lot of people about the sort of next gen of the industry. And I think, I've been 26 years in capital markets tech at various different stages, finding people in that space. And I do feel there's this sort of, the next gen have been stifled at various different stages, but I think there's a lot of opportunity and there's some good people in the industry coming through at the moment. So I feel like when I'm sat here with someone who's a legend of the space, 40 plus years in it all, there's a lot of experience there that you're able to pass on to people. You mentioned about culture and such like, but if you're sat there and you're going to give a bit of advice to people who are coming through the industry, coming through this sort of space right now, what would you say some of the best bits of career wisdom that you give to them would be?
So I'm going to go repeat what I said earlier. Own your career. Own your career, because the pivots are going to come faster and more furious than they've ever come. Right? I made it a priority throughout my career to invest in myself. Okay.
What does that look like?
So it's education. It's taking risk in roles that I wasn't necessarily, a perfect fit for, or I didn't have the DNA or whatever it may be. And I didn't go to the right school or whatever, but I was willing to take the risk, get out of my comfort zone.
You went to the right school with what we spoke
about
Villanova,
earlier. Now we know with the Pope. I should have known better. Divine intervention. Well, that's what happened, divine intervention. But at the end of the day, you have to own your career path. And your career paths, because of technology, are going to change rapidly. And certain industries are going to get changed forever, and certain are just going to embrace it and be empowered by it. And you got to continually learn what's new out there, so that you just be curious. Be curious about what's out there, so you can prepare yourself whether you decide to take the step forward or not. You'll at least know that you actually did the work to be prepared for the opportunity. So to me, it's investing in yourself for your future state. You don't need to know who you're going to be, particularly for a young person, in 10 or 20 years. Right? Think of it in gaps of 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that kind of thing. And I constantly reinvested myself every 2 to 3 years to prepare myself for the next opportunity. And when the opportunity came for me, for example, to go from Morgan Stanley, the sell side, running sales, to go into Morgan Stanley, the buy side, to running execution globally, I wasn't like a trader running P&L, but they knew I was a good cultural fit. They knew I had certain capabilities and skills, to kind of run a business. And so I was a natural fit for that opportunity. And no different than Bloomberg. When Bloomberg came and recruited me for Morgan Stanley Investment Management, they were looking for somebody that had both sell side and buy side skills, which I checked those boxes, that had an understanding of technology, a curiosity of technology, and an interest in continuing to grow and scale businesses. And that's kind of been the nature of the way I've kind of moved around. So it's investing in oneself is the first thing I would tell anybody. And do not run away from being curious. Be curious, be inquisitive, acquire new knowledge that you might not have learned in college. And then the other thing, people go and work for companies, right? And, make sure that the company you work for is positioning you with strong managers and leadership, and people that are clear and transparent in the direction they want to take the organization. People generally don't leave firms, they leave people. They leave managers. So as a young person, still learning on the job, so to speak, if you have the luxury or the opportunity to position yourself with strong leadership within these organizations, run to it, because your career is long. And that, to me, if you can take advantage of that in the early days, good for you.
It's so important, isn't it? You're exactly right on that. That I think, I look at even kids at school, let's say, you can have a kid who loves a subject and then gets a different teacher, and that love fades off the back of it. It's exactly the same thing here. You can have a CV and say, I want to work for X company because it'd be great to have that company on my CV. But you're working for the worst person in that company, and all of a sudden your life's a misery. I think it's so important. And I love what you said about curiosity. I've spoken a bit about on that on this show over recent years, and a good friend of mine is about to write a book about the whole concept of curiosity. It's halfway through it at the moment. And I can't wait to read it because I think it's so important, isn't it, about how people can do that. Invest in yourselves. I love it.
I constantly remind my grandchildren, particularly the two oldest, being curious. Learn. Don't just say AI is this, that, or the other thing. Learn yourself. Don't let some teacher stop you from using OpenAI or Grok or Claude or whatever it may be. And that doesn't mean I want it. That doesn't mean I want you to use it to do your homework. But if you have a question and you can't answer because your teacher's unavailable, use the technology in front of you to kind of complement your thinking. That's the way I look at it.
Totally agree. Let's finalize and wrap up just talking about some of the investments you've been taking just before we melt actually out here.
No question.
The shades rapidly disappearing
all over the place,
disappearing as we go. But
I'll send you a bill for my next dermatology appointment.
Exactly. We'll finish off just by what's exciting. You mentioned a few bits and pieces. The industry's changing at pace. We're seeing a lot of people move, pivot, adapt, improvise. We're seeing innovation at scale at the moment. I think it's probably one of the most fascinating times that I've been involved in this space. It feels like there's so many different things colliding at pace, creating so many opportunities. Tell me what you expect to see. What are some of the predictions? What's the crystal ball look like?
So my crystal ball, not necessarily for capital markets or financial services, although we'll come to that in a second. So I think I'm a big believer, not necessarily in Elon Musk per se, because again, I'm not picking sides. I happen to believe in a big way, since nothing was going on for 50 years, in space exploration and the opportunities in space, whether it's with data centers or exploring Moon or Mars, and the capability with these private companies, most notably SpaceX, but also Firefly and Blue Origin is real. And the private dollars funding these guys is real. So I think that gap of going from the moon, on a frequent basis is going to close quite substantially in the coming years ahead. And I do think there are opportunities in space for us to take advantage of, considering all the bullshit that takes place down here in the United States with political agenda. So there is that. Number two, I mentioned humanoid robots before. My interest in humanoid robots is not to displace people. It's to complement people for roles and responsibilities, particularly in hard labor, that they don't want to do. Whether that's in a factory or on a conveyor belt or whatever it may be, so they can get more meaningful jobs. But don't forget, the world is an aging society. We don't have enough freaking human labor, to do the jobs that we have. Just look at recent statistics, coming out of the United States. The labor is still moving positively despite concerns around inflation and job loss. I don't see job loss. And so I think the opportunities for people to become more important in the roles that they play today is actually real, while the roles they don't care about will be augmented with some kind of automation or humanoid robot, depending upon the field. And I do think the application for humanoid robots will be available both in corporate, like logistics and conveyor belts and factories, as well as in a longer term in the home, where, I don't know about you, but I hate doing dishes and laundry and vacuuming, and so does my wife. And somebody's got to do it.
We've already got the little robot vacuum now,
and for
that's the start,
these things are not going to cost much more than a freaking iPhone. And to me, I'm bringing that technology in because it'll give me more time to do the things that I want to do with my kids.
Invigilating fighting on the golf course, right?
And I could do that all day long. And the third area that I invest in is quantum computing.
Absolutely.
So I'm an investor in a company called PsiQuantum. Not a big investor, but enough that if something happens, it'll matter. And PsiQuantum has been recently designated by the United States as one of the critical quantum computing companies in the United States and, quite frankly, around the world. They're already working with Australia. They're standing up a factory in Chicago under the direction of the governor of Illinois, and they're doing a lot of other great stuff. And they just recently brought in as a board member the guy that runs Intel. I think it's Louboutin. I can't remember exactly how to say his name. And so I think, and quantum computing is interesting. I mean, we've been talking about quantum computing for 50 years. And I don't profess to believe that the answer is coming tomorrow. but I think we're closer to leveraging and commercializing quantum computing than we ever have.
Yeah.
And assuming quantum computing gets to that point in the next couple of years, and I'm a big believer that by 2030, you will see meaningful results in healthcare and biotech with quantum computing. We will solve problems that have plagued humanity for hundreds of years, for centuries, that a classical computer couldn't do, right? And it's really exciting to believe that. And I get that for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, AI, quantum computing, humanoid robots, they've been the Jetsons, right?
Yeah.
I now think we are at that kind of pivot in humanity and in, quite frankly, investment and in opportunity for these things to become real and to get commercialized in a meaningful way. And I think they will help bring abundance in a lot of different respects to the world and give people back things that they want to do, you know, whether it's their family, whether it's, you know, free time, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And so those are the three areas that I invest in personally. I'm also a member or a partner of an investment community here in New York called Tribeca Early Stage Partners.
Okay.
And it's 50, give me a little bit of room on the number, 55 folks, like-minded across fixed income, equity, sell side, buy side, derivatives, you know, that have been in capital markets or finance for, you know, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years in my case. And we look for we scour the world looking for opportunities, screen and filter opportunities. Primarily started as Series A FinTech, and we've, you know, that's how I got involved in space exploration with this company, Firefly, was through them. It's not a normal kind of path we would go to, but we were presented with an opportunity to invest in this company, this lunar landing company called Firefly. And I did it, and Firefly went public around 8 months ago or whatever it was, and it's incredible to watch. And they were the first public company to land upright on the moon a year ago, March. So good, and so to be part of that or have some skin in the game or some of that, it's exciting to watch.
That's the whole thing, isn't it?
But it also draws you in to learn about it.
Yeah.
So I know more about space exploration, humanoid robots, and quantum today than I did 3 or 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so investments draw you in. So I'm, you know, whether they work out or not remains to be seen.
But it keeps that curiosity.
But it keeps me fresh. It keeps me curious. Keeps me intellectually motivated. And then I can speak to 10 and 12-year-olds about it. Exactly. And it's fun. I enjoy it.
Right. It sounds like you're living the dream.
I am living the dream.
But it sounds. Yeah. I mean, look. It's. I've enjoyed. I knew I'd love catching up with you. I knew this was going to be a great episode. But I just think it's so good to have people on there that are so optimistic about what the opportunities are, and it's been an absolute pleasure. So thanks for coming and joining us.
Thank you for having me. And as I said, to start with, embrace to empower, and be curious, and don't give up. Do your own homework. Don't let the fear mongers and the doom scrollers in.
We're in. I'll drink to that.
Good to see
man.
you.
Great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on, and thank you all for watching. We'll see you soon on the next episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.